Okay, so I was watching my local political programme when this car crash interview happened. It was Politics Southwest with the host was Martin Oates, sitting with what can only be described as a con artist and Tory MP Anne-Marie Morris and Labour MP Luke Pollard, responding to a statement a while back made by ex-Tory MP George Useless. They were talking about Brexit. Now, when talking about Brexit, I would normally say, well, you know, what do you expect from the Tories being questioned about anything on Brexit? It's just going to be like made up crap. But I was completely stunned by Anne-Marie Morris's statement. She made a comment at the end, just completely taken aback. What was the main head twister was the fact that we all watched the same B-roll of the fishermen just like struggling and like just feeling that they'd been thrown to the wolves, and her response, and especially at the end, you're like, wow. It's like, wow. But enough of me, waffling on. Let's take a look.
Now, there's anger among Cornish fishermen that the government's being slow to lift restrictions on fishing for spur dog, a small species of shark better known to chip shop patrons as rock salmon. This is despite the fact that the EU has already done so from the 1st of January. A ban on catching spur dogs has been in place since 2010, but Cornish fishermen say they've gathered evidence that the population has now dramatically recovered. And this is just one of many concerns that the government has failed to deliver for the industry, despite its promises of a brighter future post-Brexit. Lucy Fisher reports.
Rock salmon, a staple of London chippies until a ban was imposed on catching them in 2010, amid reports the species had declined by as much as 90%. But down in Newlyn, fishermen say they've collected evidence to show the population of these fish, known locally as spur dogs, has exploded in recent years, and they want the restrictions lifted in line with the EU.
It's just absolutely ridiculous. Myself, my crew and the boat, we've spent the last 12 years working with the scientists on several different projects trying to prove the abundance of the spur dog. So all the French, Irish, Spanish, they can all work away and we're still dumping loads and loads of dead spur dog. It's just unbelievable.
But the UK, with its sort of post-Brexit independent coastal status, should have the sort of flexibility, the agility to open that fishery as of January the 1st, like the EU. But where we find ourselves is we actually don't have that fishery open. We're sort of waiting for a number of months to get that fishery reopened and allow our fishermen to actually land some of that catch. So again, it's another kind of frustration, stuff that we're still learning on the back of Brexit. But it's painful for the fishermen involved who simply just want to go out and do their job and get on with it.
It follows a row over quotas, which Southwest fishermen say leaves them worse off than before Brexit, despite claims to the opposite from the government, who say the industry's 33 million better off.
I think it's always the sort of end-of-year headlines. The government likes to announce all the good news, the positives and big high numbers, but I mean, in reality, what we found in the Southwest, just doing some basic calculations, is we've actually had a £2 million loss of fishing opportunities since where we were in 2021.
A claim not disputed by the former Environment Secretary this week. And he says the deal when we left the EU should have been better negotiated by Lord Frost.
He was reluctant to make any concessions, and in the end it all happened in the final few days, and it didn't serve us well leaving fisheries to the very end. I think it would have been better had it been addressed earlier in the negotiation.
Following our questioning on spur dog stocks, Mr Eustace has tabled a debate for next week, urging the government to look at the way it measures sustainable catch quotas. Meanwhile, the government says any delay is necessary in order to meet legal requirements.
Anne-Marie, if we look at the issue of spur dog, don't worry, won't we get too sort of technical on this, but I mean, one of the great Brexit benefits, Jacob Rees-Mogg, your colleague this week, again talking about the ability to be swifter or more agile in terms of regulation. We're now in a situation where people in the fishing industry are watching their colleagues in the lumbering, cumbersome EU, all of these countries that apparently have to come together, struggle to make a decision. The decision's been made, they're catching their fish, and we're waiting for our agile government in Westminster to catch up with them.
And I think George is right. We clearly didn't get the negotiation right, and clearly it now needs to be fixed. And George is right to be leading the charge to try to address the problem, because you're right. The whole point about Brexit was to put us in a better position, not a worse position.
But hang on a minute. This government, Boris Johnson's government, a massive majority for Brexit, for Brexiteers, you've had since 2019 to implement this. How can you, the people who've been in charge of this, now look back and say, well, we didn't do a good enough job? It was you, collectively. You were making the decision.
I don't think we predicted COVID, and I don't think we predicted Ukraine, and I would agree with you that despite all of that, these things needed and should have been addressed. It's not a perfect world, and I'm certainly not going to say, that it is perfect and that we could have sorted all of these Brexit benefits. I'm as frustrated as you. I'm a Brexiteer, as you may recall, and therefore I'm absolutely
Few more committed to the cause than you, Anne-Marie.
as frustrated as you. And the challenge is partly events, dear boy, events, and partly the challenge, the sheer challenge of the bureaucracy and the red tape and the legislation that has to be unpicked. And I can tell you that is much harder work than most people imagine.
Mind you, you've got this bit of legislation to remove all the EU legislation, which, again, Jacob Rees-Mogg has said he quoted a lawyer saying that it could be done very swiftly indeed. I forget the timescale, but...
The reality of... No, I don't, because the reality is you've got to know exactly where the EU legislation is, and not all of it came in through the House of Commons.
Luke.
Fishing was lied to. The fishers wanted a better deal because, frankly, they didn't have a good enough deal as I would like them to have had within the European Union. They were promised a better deal, and that was a lie. Since we've seen our exit from the European Union, I'm afraid that fishers, especially in the southwest, have had less fish. We were promised full access and control of our coastal waters. That did not happen. We were promised the full ability to fish in our waters. That has not happened. We have European boats still fishing in our waters. We still have European super trawlers fishing in our marine protected areas, things that should be banned. And we've got a government that is so slow to act because they always look at the fishing industry and ignore their concerns. They're ignoring the plight of our industry, and I'm afraid that this is deeply frustrating because we should have a better type of fishing regulation. Fishing is important both to the constituency I represent and our entire region, but it doesn't seem that we've got there. And I like George Eustace a lot, and it's great that now he's left government, he's got all these critiques of the things he signed off when he was in government. But I'm not interested in the government rewriting the past years, going, well, we should have got this wrong because we've messed this up and we messed that up. I want solutions now for our fishers and our farmers who've been screwed over by not only a poor Brexit deal, but really bad trade deals as well.
You're hoping very much that we're not far away from a general election, that Labour could be that future, given that Keir Starmer has indicated that there would be very little room for manoeuvre in terms of renegotiating anything with the EU. How can you improve on that situation?
That's not quite right. What Keir said is we need to make Brexit work. And as part of that, we need to fix the holes in the botched Brexit deal. And fishing is one of those holes. Lots of hyperbole, lots of big promise, lots of Brexit images that worked in the referendum, but not a lot of delivery for the fishing industry, in particular the small boat sector. Because the vast majority of people that work in fishing work in our small boat sector rather than those big super trawlers, those foreign...
But how do you unstitch what you see as a bad deal? Because he's indicated that this won't be revisited, any of the Brexit deal, going to make it work. But he's not talking about major renegotiation with Europe. He's clear about that, isn't he?
But we are talking about having conversations with our European friends about certain bits. There's elements of the fishing deal which isn't just in the big exit deal, there's in other agreements along the way. But we also need to make sure that we are delivering for those coastal communities by being better at the very basics. This issue with spur dog really shouldn't be an issue. It shouldn't be something that you're covering, that we're having to comment on, because a competent government aware of the issue should have dealt with this by now, and they haven't. I'm afraid spur dog is just the latest issue in a long line of failures when it comes to the Conservatives and fishing, despite the big promises they made.
And no, Anne-Marie, just quickly, no regrets about Brexit more broadly?
None. None. I take your point that we have yet to deliver on those Brexit benefits. I'm as disappointed as you are that they have not yet been delivered.
How long do we have to wait for them?
But do I think that there is a benefit and that it will be delivered? Yes, I do.
But when will that happen?
Well, Luke, we'll have to wait and see, won't we?
Oh dear.
Okay. Now,
Yeah, I do realise I am new to this, and some people wouldn't be surprised, but that comment at the end will give me nightmares. I've got nothing else to say. Take care. Goodbye.